Quite a lot of talk at the moment that next week, 33,000 people have been accredited to this hall where 15,000 people are legally allowed to enter. And there's great concern that when the politicians come, there's going to be more curbs on even people who are accredited. And it may be that some of the big press, as it were, the big media, powerful media, can bring some weight to bear. But some of the alternative, so-called alternative media might find it difficult. And whether many of the NGOs and alternative media may find they can't get in next week, especially towards the end. I think that people are beginning to talk about that already here, talking of being stuck at the door. Okay, can you just give us a little flavour of one or two stories you've done here?
Oh.
Not in detail, but just to give us an idea of what you've covered.
Oh, I mean, we're covering everything from the streets to the suites. Yesterday today, just an hour ago, we went on this underground tour of the convergence spaces. We started by looking at just what's happened so far. We looked at the Danish text and the new texts that are coming out. This whole issue of climate debt is a very important one. And, I look at journalism and doing the daily stories at democracynow.org, the way celebrity journalism operates. There's a reason. I grew up on soap operas. And yes, you watch every single day like, oh my God, who's she going to sleep with and what's going to happen there and whose kid is that? And you come to repeat the stories to your friends. Well, if you do the same thing with stories that matter, and so on the issue of climate debt, how is this translating out all over the world? We started with a young man that you might have interviewed too, that we still are getting comment on. His name is Mohammed Aksam Mahmoud. He's 15 years old, and he's from the Maldives. Amazing representative of that country. Here is president, right? Mohammed Nasheed holds an underwater cabinet meeting to stress what global warming would feel like, right? The whole cabinet meeting underwater, except I think two of the members who didn't know how to scuba dive. And he's coming to Copenhagen.
We were thinking of doing that with you, but we didn't have a spare pair of goggles.
But here is Aksam, who's 15, who looks into the camera and says, would you sanction murder? This is what he said to the audience. He said, because global warming kills, and it's going to kill my culture and my people. He's 15 years old. I mean, talking about a truth teller. And that's the other power of the independent media, simply providing a forum for people to speak for themselves. So a child from the Maldives or an elder from the Arctic village in Alaska talking about the permafrost melting, or outside the mermaid, right? Hans Christian Andersen, that mermaid that melts every day, or the sign that said, politicians talk, politicians talk, leaders act. That is a very important challenge for everyone. And over at the Climate Center right now, covering the speeches of people like Numo Bassi, who comes out of the Niger Delta. I saw him in Benin City when I was covering Chevron, a documentary we did called Drilling and Killing, Chevron and Nigeria's Oil Dictatorship. There was Numo Bassi. I did that with Jeremy Scahill, who later went on to write Blackwater. Hearing from people all over the world, I mean, the delegates from the developing world who are here, who join with the voices of the outside, deeply concerned about their countries. These are the issues every day. The most important thing, I mean, Tom Goldtooth from the Indigenous Environmental Network, so important. The folks who, when President Obama was receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, 300 miles from here, as he's announcing the escalation of war in Afghanistan and makes one reference to global warming, to climate change. Democracy Now! Was following the indigenous population who went to the U.S. Embassy to deliver a letter about how global warming is affecting them. They don't know the borders, they don't talk borders, but from the United States up through Canada, and how it's affecting all of their communities and wiping them out in one way or another, their livelihoods and their culture. It's our job to bring out the voice of the grassroots. I write books with my brother, and one of the books we wrote was called Static. And the reason we called it that is in this high-tech digital age with high-definition television and digital radio, still, all we get is static. that veil of distortion and lies and misrepresentations and half-truths that obscure reality. When what we need is the media to give us the dictionary definition of static, criticism, opposition, unwanted interference. We need a media that covers power, not covers for power. We need a media that is the fourth estate, not for the state. And we need a media that covers the movements that create static and make history.
Wow, I'm marching behind you there, but we've got 2 minutes to go, so you can just mention, we should hold up your book, because you've been so good to us and giving us lots of time. I don't know if I'm holding it in the right place. You can try holding it. Just tell us what it is. Oh, it's that camera there.
At Student House, which is, I think it's the Norrport Metro in Copenhagen. I'm sure I said it wrong, but that's going to be in 2 Friday nights from now. What is that, the 18th or the 19th? And a week from tonight. And tonight I'm going to be doing something with, is it Fresh Air? Oh, Fresh Air Center. I'll be moderating a debate on cap and trade. But the most important thing is support independent media. That's what I have to say. Again, the media, the most powerful institutions on earth. It's the way we come to understand the world, and it's the way the rest of the world comes to understand us. And it has to be through something other than a corporate lens. I encourage people to go to democracynow.org. Our headlines are also available in Spanish there. We are moved into the most eco-friendly radio, TV, internet studio in the United States. And we are hoping to translate our broadcast every day into Spanish, into Arabic, and into other languages right near the UN, and train the next generation of independent journalists. Independent media is where it's at. Democracy Now!
Okay, Amy Goodman, thank you so much for coming in. And in a moment, I think we're going to bring you the Welsh Environment Minister, who will be the face and voice of power. So we'll see how receptive she is to some of these ideas. Thanks very much for coming in.